there is a ton of misguided, unhelpful information surrounding everything AxSpa. Follow along with this video as I aim to dispel 5 of the common myths that I see online every day. Myth number 1. You have AS, AxSpa, you are going to fuse. So what's happened with you? You were diagnosed, or you know someone that's loved that's been diagnosed, and you Googled it. What happens with AS, this big scary word, and crikey, you see the scariest images online of people basically bent at 90 degrees that look like they're having a very rough time. Well, the good news is, it's roughly in the data 25 to 40% of people that do end up going on to spinal fusion. Now, there's a caveat with that. There's a ton of factors that play a role in this, and as our medicine has become much better, particularly with biologics, what we're finding is that that 25 to 40% window is actually decreasing. It's becoming closer and closer to the quarter mark. That's really encouraging. However, the data is not going to bear that out until we continue to treat people. So I imagine in a few years' time, we're going to have new studies that show that we are actually reducing the amount of patients that fuse. It's really important to note that our early diagnosis, including things like MRI, including things like early identification through doctors and physios and people being aware of what this is, that is essentially diagnosing people earlier means that we can use drugs, we can use movement, we can have all the management strategies in earlier that should be able to reduce our disease activity and slow or stop, hopefully, us getting to a fused level. So I know 25%, 40%, they don't sound like great odds, but I think the data is going to bear out that that's actually a little bit lower right now at this moment. And one little caveat to really make sure that you all know, if you smoke with AxSpa, stop. You have 5 times more damage on your spine through smoking, and you're more likely to fuse through smoking than if you don't. So that is just a must do. Stop smoking. I know it's hard. Get some help from your GP or someone that you love, or whatever you do, just stop it. Number 2, you are a lady and you cannot have AS because it is for the men. That is rubbish. Okay, so historically, for a number of reasons, but for some reason, this has always been viewed as a male condition, not a female condition. I have no idea why. There's probably lots of very weird non-evidence things around it. But what we're finding is that male to female, from a radiographic, which means that on an x-ray we can pick up these changes, it is still a little bit more in favor of males. We used to think it was 3 or 4 to 1. Now the data is showing 2 to 1, maybe 1.5 to 1. So slight bias with males in imaging. However, and I'm sure there's a lot of social factors around that, which is a whole story on its own that we're not going to get into. But when we look at our non-radiographic, so patients that really can't be identified early on but have all the symptoms, when you treat them, they actually improve, which means that they have AS, they just can't quite pick it up right now. We find that it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, so you can have this as a female. I don't want you to, but you can. Why again? Historically, I think there is a few of our older guard that just haven't read the research recently, which is fine, because if you're a GP, how are you going to keep up with every single bit that changes? But shout it from the rooftops, if you have some of these symptoms and you're a female, that does not stop you getting AxSpa. Shout it out. Myth number 3, this can't be AS, it should just affect your back. Well, hopefully you've seen some of my earlier videos that explain some of the extra articular symptoms, which means basically everything outside the spine. So, quick recap, AxSpa is this new term that we have that's a broad church, an umbrella term for the family of conditions called the spondyloarthritis, which means spondy, spine, arth, joint, inflamed. And very quickly, you are on a scale. You have more axial spondyloarthritis. I know it's annoying, the words are ridiculous, but more central, i.e. spine, SIJ, pelvis, maybe upper spine as well, but mainly around that lower back spinal area. But it's a continuum all the way over to psoriatic arthritis, which is again very linked, but also much more peripheral, meaning outside the spine, fingers, joints, things that are not attached to our spine. Okay, I hope that makes some sense as a quick overview, but purely for this, remember, this condition means that your immune system is working harder. You are working harder at rest. For some reason, your volume dial of inflammation has been turned up. That, yes, if you're much more axial, will affect more of your back, your SIJ, the common or the most common symptoms. But that doesn't mean that you can't have other areas of your body that become inflamed at time to time, particularly when you're flaring. So, super quick rundown. The most common ones: skin changes like psoriasis, sausage fingers, dactylitis we call it, so literally your finger will swell up. Nail pitting, you get little dimples in your nails. Other things that we call enthesitis, which just means basically where the tendon attaches to the bone, that area there. Super common because again, it's an area that for some reason our body, when you're in a flare-up, will also attack little other parts of it and give you pain. The most common places of these: Achilles, patella, elbow. Finally, then there are the kind of odd ones like gut. Again, if you have an autoimmune systemic inflammatory condition, very, very linked to gut health, and some people can have gut disturbances. The last two that are important: costochondritis, which is palpable pain here, which is scary because it kind of is around the ticker, which we obviously get a bit fearful of, but that palpable pain on both sides. And then finally, the one I always want you guys to remember, uveitis or iritis, inflammation of the eye. It's not pushed enough in this country, but if you start to get this sensitivity in your eye or a feeling of itchiness in your eye, and it doesn't go away within a day or so, and then you start to get a bit pink and red, you go straight to a pharmacist or an ophthalmologist, where they will give you steroids straight away and calm it down. There's no need to suffer with this very itchy, painful eye. That is a very fast rundown of all of the little things that are outside of your back pain that can kick off simply because you are inflamed. There's a whole video on that, I'll link in the description, but that's a quick one, and that myth is dispelled. Myth number 4. Exercise actually makes AS worse. Wrong. So, how do we know? Actually, interestingly, exercise is pro-inflammatory. So when we study people, if we get someone to jump around and do a ton of squats and we scan their tendons and their muscles, there actually is some local inflammation that's present. That's healthy, that's normal. But obviously with an inflammatory condition, you may say, well, that's dumb. I shouldn't exercise because I'm going to cause more pain. And what I do tell people, as we start to exercise, you may have some symptoms that actually do feel more painful. This is completely expected, very, very normal. What we do know from our data is if we exercise regularly within our limit, over 3 to 6 months, we start to see a reduction in our disease activity. Those scores that you do, the boring ones with all of the filling out, the BASDAI and BAS-Phi, they reduce over time, and we actually see it within our CRP. So what it shows is long-term exercise within your limit will reduce disease activity. In the very acute phase, may make it slightly more painful. The other thing we have to think about, though, is our general health. So you might not be in pain, but you might not be living well, i.e. you might become so weak that you don't go upstairs, or you don't play pickleball with your friends, or you don't do things that you want to do, play with your grandkids, okay? So it's a tricky balance, and that's where a good therapist, like a physio, chiro, whoever you trust, comes in and should manage your load. When I say something within your ability, it's not starting to do a marathon. It's not doing things that you've never done before. That's going to suck. It's about finding that low level graded exposure. So I always start people as a quick tidbit: cycling, jump on a stationary bike for 10-15 minutes, do some of the movement routines that should be linked above me, go through these things. Just start gentle, and then with a good therapist or with someone you trust, we can slowly build you up and get you strong and basically conditioned, ready to do the things that you want to do in life. So that myth, the best thing about this condition, the best thing, it's a weird thing to say, but physio, medication and exercise, they go together, okay? So some conditions are very medication heavy. Other conditions like this is much more lifestyle management and trying to get you to achieve your goals without flaring you up and without causing any pain. It's a fun process, but we can do it. So exercise doesn't make AS worse. It causes a little bit of acute inflammation, but long term is helpful. Myth number 5, medication is the only way to deal with AxSpa. Well, as we quickly touched on before, that's wrong, because the one thing that I love about this condition, which is a very odd thing to say, frankly, I don't want anyone to have this condition, but from a physio, the way that my career's gone, I fell into this and love the population group. You're all very nice. And I love the idea of really using strategies long term that can improve your quality of life. Certain conditions in rheumatology are so heavily based on just the medicine, and then we come in as therapists and we kind of pick you up after a huge flare or after you're in control. We kind of pick you up and build you back up. This is slightly different. This is probably 50-50. Self-management techniques, exercise, things that we can control, and 50% medicine to drop down that inflammation level. What we see very, very often is you go to your rheumatologist or you get your bloods done and you look great on bloods. You're fantastic on this piece of paper, but you're not living well, okay? It's about living well and having a high quality of life with this condition. You may be super deconditioned. You might not be playing with your grandkids. You might not be doing silly things that you'd love to do. That's really important to know, that our exercise, the things that we can control, like our eating habits, sleeping habits, the amount of movement we get through the day, that is really important and is a huge 50% part of this condition. So don't let anybody tell you that going to a therapist is bad, that trying to do exercises is not worth it because you need your biologics. Rubbish. We know from the data that we make a profound difference to our quality of life scores through movement and things you can control, which is so empowering. And hopefully some of these videos that we've been chucking on the channel can help guide you in that. So if you, like me, are becoming a little bit sick of all of this AI nonsense popping up and telling you all of these unhelpful things around AS, I hope that that helped. So on the channel, as you've probably seen, there's a ton of education resources. I try to just make this as comprehensive as possible for my patients, because I promise you, if you can educate yourself and actually educate your loved ones around everything AxSpa, you're going to make a big difference to your quality of life, your pain, everything that surrounds that. So have a watch of some of the playlist. I've also, if you're struggling with what exercises to do, I have finally done my 7-day follow along routine just to give you something fresh to move your spine early in the morning to help that morning stiffness. So keep your eyes peeled on the channel. I'm going to continue to develop our AxSpa kind of database of education, of knowledge, of everything that surrounds this condition. If you have any big questions or there's something you really want me to do or really want me to answer, stick them in the comments, do the whole YouTube thing. Thank you very much. I will catch you all very soon.